Okay, everybody, welcome back to Talk with the Now podcast. And I've got a great man, y'all. This is just going to be a great show today. I've got a great guest. We've got Mr. Ken Coleman on the show. This is going to be just awesome. I warned y'all about this on a previous podcast, and I'm just telling you, I'm so glad to have Ken on. Ken is one of my radio current radio heroes, if you will. And Ken, it's nice to have you here, man. Thanks for coming on.
Well, thanks for having me. Glad to be with you.
Yeah. I want to first off, just if no one's really familiar with Ken, Ken is a what I might call a career slash calling guru in a sense, maybe. And he's been doing this for a long time. He's got his own show called the Ken Coleman Show. And Ken, I was wondering if you could maybe give us just a little bit of bio about yourself and how you came into being at the Dave Ramsey family, if you will, and what how life's going for you.
Yeah. Well, I thought I was going to go into politics and had been angling towards that since high school, went into it right out of college and got into it in my early 20s, was successful in it. I was working for the governor of Virginia at 23 and felt like there was something that was missing. I had long wanted to be involved in public service, helping people, and felt like it was in politics. And so began to have some questions early on about that, but went ahead and got out of politics, went into the private business sector to build a business resume, if you will, that would allow me to run for office down the line. And in my early 30s, I began to really question the path into politics. And that was a very unsettling season for me because I had been aiming for that since I was 16. And so the long story short is I began to really weigh it and decided that I was absolutely sure that politics wasn't the direction. But the challenge was, well, what is the direction? And that was an unsettling time for me as well. And wrestled with it, got some great help from some great people in my life that coached me through it in a period of self-assessment and really diving deep, and came to the conclusion that it was broadcasting. But the crazy thing about that is I didn't have any experience in it. I didn't have a degree in it. Felt like I could do it. Felt like it was in line with passion and had a lot of similarities to the public call in politics. But the reality is I didn't know anybody. I was early 30s and had not done it. And so I had to just start from scratch. And so about a 7-year journey of doing lots of little things, as you may know, and got to a point where got to know Dave Ramsey. I'd interviewed him several times, and he asked me to join the team here, which was an invitation to join a rocket ship. And so I took it. And 3 years later, stepped into the role that I'm in now, the dream job, where I had my own syndicated national show and Sirius XM and YouTube and podcasts and all the things. But that's the short version to a very, very long story, which nobody wants to hear the really, really long version. But that's kind of what got me here. And it was what I experienced in that story I just told. The disappointment, the confusion, the unsettled feeling. Did I waste all this time? How do I figure out what's next? It was that journey that I walked through that now I use to inform and to fuel the work I do now to help many people as many people as I possibly can to do what they were born to do.
What if you don't mind me asking, does Dave has Dave ever told you like what was the thing that like he heard this and he was like, I want to meet that guy? Or did he hear something, and it's sort of like what, kind of made him want to talk to you or get you up there? You know what I mean?
I mean, he hasn't told me, but I know what it is. I mean, because we have become acquaintances and professional friends. I had interviewed him in front of 12,000 leaders. I had interviewed him for a leadership podcast that I hosted in the Atlanta area. So I'd done deep dives with him before, and he knew that, I had the chops per se. He had come on my radio show.
Yeah.
Week 3 of my local talk radio show in Atlanta. So he had heard me do the ins and outs on radio. He had seen me on stage. So when they needed somebody to kind of take their hosting to the next level and take over the Entrepreneur Leadership Podcast, I was fresh on his mind because he had seen me do that. So that's, he knew I had the chops to do what he was asking me to do.
Okay. I live in the Metro Atlanta area now, and I know like this is such a huge place with so many people, especially for the Southeast, and just getting into the radio biz itself must have been a challenge. Just from what I've heard you talk about, I remember you telling a story about doing high school football games for a while, and how that was just a challenge to get yourself aligned so that you could do that, and you had to sacrifice, and that seems to be a big theme about how you got to where you are.
Yeah, I mean, look, you've got to pay your dues, and pay your dues in broadcasting is a little bit more um wild west than other industries. It's very tough to get in. It's very political. Absolutely a who you know business, much
Mm.
more than most industries. And you get trampled on, you get rejected a lot. I mean, it's tough. There's no question about it. And so you've got to start small. You've got to do the little things, unless you're, coming from a different, you know, unless you're a celebrity already, and then you come into broadcasting. Outside of that,
Yeah.
you got to hustle. You got to pay your dues.
I know just the dynamics of the way radio is nowadays. I just hear, I don't know, but I hear that the way radio, podcasting, internet, it's all kind of changing before us every year, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. In that you've got so many people that are putting podcasts out, and then there's so many that are out there that have just gone dormant. So it's an increasingly busy world. I mean, when I started the Catalyst podcast for Catalyst, which is a leadership organization in Atlanta,
Mhm.
back in, oh man, it would have been probably 2009, 2010 ish. I mean, nobody knew what podcasts were. It was really, really early. And now everybody's got a podcast. Literally everybody's got one. It's a really crowded world. But there's a very small percentage that actually have a decent size audience, So yeah,
Yeah.
it's always changing. Mediums are changing, Sure, with technology, who knows? Who knows what podcasting will look like 5 years from now?
Oh yeah, definitely. I can actually remember the first real podcast that I got into. I'm sort of a history buff, and I got into the History of Rome podcast, and that guy just took off with that podcast. And I think he started it like back in 2008. And it's like, even back then, who knew that he would be so forward thinking? And he still even does a podcast. It's crazy to think about how things have changed so much.
Oh yeah.
You know, let's talk about Oh, before I go to that, I wanted to ask you about Virginia. You're from Virginia. Do you miss Virginia? Do you ever go back?
I'm not a guy who misses a lot of things.
Yeah.
I'm a forward facing kind of dude. So no, I love living in Nashville, so I don't miss it, but I miss the people. I miss, some old friends and family, I try to get back once a year.
Mhm.
But that doesn't always happen. My parents were just in town from Virginia. I'm trying to get them to move to Tennessee so I don't have to go back.
Ah, nice. I did
Yeah,
a
but I love it. Great area.
I did my first trip to DC back in 2013, and I'm pretty sheltered. I First time I drove from Atlanta to DC, we went up the back country, up the
Hmm.
mountains through all the way over to DC. Some of the most gorgeous areas I've ever seen just riding over there, and then
Oh yeah.
finally getting into DC and seeing all that the beautiful monuments and everything to all the founders and so forth. It was just incredible.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you're living in Nashville. That's pretty exciting that you're adjusting well to it. you know. Uh,
Oh yeah. It's a great area. Love it.
So your new book, I've got a copy here. Ken sent me a copy, From Paycheck to Purpose. And Ken, I have read. I'm almost done. I've came pretty close, and there's a couple of things that stand out to me about your book. And if you want to, maybe if you could first off just kind of give us a overview of what it is and why you wrote it.
Yeah. So the title really encapsulates the four emotions, excuse me, the two emotions rather around work.
Hmm.
Paycheck and purpose. So paycheck is provision and purpose is contribution. Everybody needs to make a living, wants to make a living, but everybody also wants to make a contribution. And so what we attempted to do there is just show people that it's possible to make the money you want and get the meaning that you desire out of work, income and impact. It is possible. We wanted to show people how to move up. If you're trying to figure out how to move up the ladder and get that dream job, the promotion that you want, there's a way to do it.
Mhm.
And there's a very clear path. And that's what the book is, the 7 stages that will lead you to doing work you love. And beyond that, making a huge difference, the difference that you want to make.
I love it because it reminds me kind of Dave's show. I listened to Dave for years on end, and then bought his books. But it sort of like brings it all together, if you will, to me. If you're an everyday listener, to get a book like this and you listen to Dave every day, this is going to bring it to me a lot more in. And I love getting a book like this, and just I earmarked a few things that I just wanted to highlight, that I noticed. One was this one that says, "Is there even such a thing as a dream job? And is there too much to hope that it can happen for you?" I mean, who hasn't had that run through their mind? You know?
Yeah. Well, and the answer is yes. There is. And I think so many people go, well, it's just a dream. And we've gotten to this place where um, when it comes to work, we just refuse to think that there's something out there that you can do and really, really enjoy it. Do it well, enjoy it, and create results that matter to you. And it is possible. I mean, listen, I readily admit this is an uphill battle to get people to think differently about work, that it's just about making as much money as possible. Um, all work matters. It's there. It's honorable, but there's so much more out there, and it's about being on purpose and doing what you were created to do. And so, when I hear somebody ask that question, the answer is absolutely. But what if I told you that it was pretty easy to figure out? I think people will be like, "Tell me more," and it is. And it's the first stage in the 7 stages that we unpack in the book. You got to figure out what you do best. That's your talent. You got to get really clear on the work you love to do, the type of work that you look forward to, the type of work that you get lost in, and the type of work that you don't ever want to stop doing. I mean, you just really, really love it. You lose sight of time. And then finally, what are the results that you would love to create? Who are the people you're trying to help, the problems you want to solve, the solutions you want to provide? Those are the type of things we're talking about with results. And so when you can figure that out, you begin to see possibilities that maybe you never saw before. And so, first and foremost, you've got to be clear on what that kind of work is that would fire up your soul. And when you figure that out, then we go, okay, how do I get qualified to do that? And the book, as you know, walks you through very practical steps on how you can get qualified and create a plan to get qualified. And then how do you get connected so that you have opportunities that knock on your door? You're not always kicking the door down and saying, please look at me, look at me. And so as we walk the reader through the 7 stages, all of a sudden it's not so much a mythical journey anymore. It's real, it's doable.
I would imagine, and I listen to the show a lot, and I've seen this a lot where people will say, they'll give that seems almost to me like a typical pushback in a way where they'll say, "But Ken, I want to get into radio," or "Ken, I want to be the next Hollywood actor. I'm living in, Mobile, Alabama, and I'm doing theater and everything, and I want to go. I know that New York or LA is where I got to get to if I want to make it big." How often do you hear things like that? And I guess, in general, what do you sort of tell those kind of people?
Yeah, well, it may be possible that you at some point have to move to some city and uproot. It may be.
Hmm.
It may be possible. We have to at least be open to that possibility. But you don't have to move to get started. And I think that that's what scares a lot of people. First of all, let's just own the fact that we as humans are creatures of comfort. We're just creatures of comfort. So, what's sad is most of us would rather be miserable than uncomfortable, because it's like the devil I know. I'm miserable, but it's the devil I know, and I can gut through the misery. But
Hmm.
ooh, make me go out and chart a course and move forward and not be sure how it's going to happen, when it's going to happen. Ooh, no, I'll hang out with misery,
Yeah.
and that's really true. So, what I would say to somebody who has this notion that I've got to move somewhere physically to go somewhere professionally, that's not always true. And I can tell you it's not true when you're starting. In my previous book, The Proximity Principle, we introduced this law called the law of the zip code, which says that everything I need to get started is already around me. I've got everything around me that I need to get started. Now, we're talking about getting started. So these are these early little shuffles, small steps, but everything is there. So we humans are great at creating excuses as to why we can't do something. And getting started is where we see most of the excuses.
Hmm. That reminds me of one of my favorite Hollywood stories is Chris Pratt.
Mhm.
Just because the dude was like, I don't think many of us can do blind faith like he did. He just loaded up, moved to Hollywood in his van and lived out of his van. And I mean, obviously that's an exception to the rule, but um, it does kind of illustrate to me sometimes where you have to be willing to put it all on the table, if you will, and just see what happens.
Yeah. If you know it's the right direction, it may not be the perfect path, but you know it's the direction.
Hmm.
So by moving in that direction, again, may not be the exact path. And again, we use this mountain climbing metaphor all the time, every day on the Ken Coleman Show, and certainly in this book. So when these really skilled climbers climb these big mountains like an Everest, okay, they have a pretty good idea what the path is going to need to be. But things change, right? There are times where they can't make it, so they got to go another way because of weather or some unforeseen, circumstance. Sometimes they got to hunker down, they got to wait. Same thing with us. When we move in the right direction, it's rare that it's a straight line and that it's really easy, but you still know you're headed in the right direction, so you'll figure it out. And I think that's the key.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's true. And to use, I think maybe a real world, you know, scenario might be for someone. Say you're a truck driver and you're like, I have always wanted to be a graphic designer, but I have zero experience. And to me, you give great steps in this, and it's not just a fluff up the book, so to speak, but just how you got to go. And three of the principles that I saw that you wrote were get clear, get qualified, and get connected. And the getting qualified. So for instance, we'll use the graphic design guy. He's got to get qualified. So to me, that guy, he has to say, okay, I've decided that truck driving is no longer for me. Then he has to take those next steps to how am I going to become a graphic designer? Yes, I used to play around on Photoshop in high school, but now I'm a 25-year-old and I want to become, that next great graphic designer in Atlanta or
Yeah.
wherever.
Yeah. So here's what he's going to do. He's going to see what online certifications or courses that he could take, or
Mm,
a community class online, or a traditional college course online, whatever. He's going to take those courses. So he's going to get the education piece, and it doesn't have to be a full degree, by the way. Okay. But he's just going to go get some training and some online certification or whatever. Okay. Credits. I've studied this many classes in online, excuse me, in graphic design. Then he's going to get a laptop. And when he's, instead of sleeping all night, he may take an hour or two in the truck cab, and he's going to volunteer for a local nonprofit or a local ministry or something small, or he's going to do something for a fundraiser for somebody's kid or something. And he's going to start designing stuff for free or for
mm,
very small amounts of money. Why? To create a portfolio so that he's got the education and the experience to be qualified. But that truck driver can make the transition from the cab to the cubby, or whatever you call it,
cubicle. Yeah.
cubicle. Thank you. I'm brain dead at this point in the day, but I mean, it's possible.
Gotcha. Hmm.
It really is possible, right? But it's going to take some discipline and it's going to take some patience. But you can build up a portfolio as a graphic designer while you're out being a road warrior.
Hmm. And I know that for some people as well, they'll have to, like you said, make that sacrifice. And there's going to be a transition point where um, truck driving may not be feasible anymore. And they're just going to have to go get, like, say, for instance, they don't quite have those qualifications to be the next graphic designer. They might have to quit that truck driving job and wait on tables or go work for a landscaping crew or something.
That's exactly right. So, if I got to switch day jobs in order to have position
Hmm.
to be able to step into my dream job, that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
But again, listen, it sounds really simple, but it requires a willingness to change.
Right.
And a lot of people don't like change. But hey, if I've got to transition from truck to, a warehouse, so I'm not traveling all the time, so I have a more 9 to 5 type schedule that will allow me to do what I need to do, that's what I'm doing. I'm not even thinking twice about it because I look at it as a necessary rung on the ladder. It's not going sideways. It's not going backwards. It's all forward movement.
Hmm. So, do you have any favorite success stories from the on air people that you've talked to that like maybe one or two that you can just think of offhand that you're like, wow, this person called me and next thing I knew they're calling me back up maybe, 6 months later or something. They're right there on that path.
I mean, I can think of so many,
Yeah.
I can think of one gentleman who, uh, wanted to transition from an operations role, in a very large company, multinational company,
Hmm.
called me. He wanted to move into culture stuff and helping develop culture within the company, kind of an HR position, but really focused on training leaders within the organization and really pouring into um, their growth and then ultimately the culture of the company. And I gave him advice on how he would start doing it, and he made some connections. And about a year and a half later, he called in and he stepped into the dream job. I think of
Wow.
I mean, I get social media messages every day. I mean, so many people that have said, you know what, I listened to you, I did what you told me to do, and as a result, I'm in my dream job, and I've never been happier. I mean, there's so many examples, but
Yeah.
the reality is that um, those people are very kind and they're appreciative for my coaching role. But the fact of the matter is, I didn't do anything. Every one of those women and men made sacrifices. They disciplined themselves. They sacrificed, as I said. They were patient. They put themselves out there. They handled the naysayers. They did it.
Hmm. One of the things that my personal opinion about your two books that you have that is different in a lot of ways from, I mean, there are books like this, but if a person goes into reading these books, I just got to say, don't go into it reading it casually. Like you're just going to go to Starbucks and you're going to read this thing in like 3 days. To me, these are like what I would call homework books. These are books that you sit down, you marinate on it, and can ask you like 10 questions, five, whatever. And you're going to sit there and you're going to have to think through, like you said, in your, grab that piece of paper and pencil the old fashioned way. Maybe, maybe the younger people haven't done that before, but, you're going to sit down in Starbucks or whatever, and you're going to think through, okay, I took Ken's assessment or something or some other assessment, and you're going to have to think through, what am I good at? Or maybe you're so far and you got to go through, I got to start writing down the people I know and where are these connections. But that's not what we want to do nowadays, is it?
No, I mean, everybody wants the quick fix. Just give me the dream. I would like it supersized, please, with
Yeah.
a side of pickles. I mean, that's just the world we live in. Everything is microwavable. We want everything to come to us quickly. We want to put out a social media post and get 100 likes immediately.
Hmm.
And anything worth doing. Certainly, we're talking about living and working on purpose. That is, there's some serious reflection. There's some serious dedication to the process, and it doesn't happen overnight, but it is always worthwhile.
Well, Ken, I think that one of the biggest attributes you have with your show is that you are a product of your own philosophy in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
And I think that's great. And even it even makes me think to myself my own ambitions and what I want to do and how to get there. And I'm one of those people, admittedly, that I'm just still I'm searching between things that I like to do and what I want to do. And I can't thank you enough for the book and what you're doing on the show. I mean, I think that's really been helpful to me and others.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Before I let you go, though, I just want to, if you don't mind, I have a few questions for you, and you feel
Yeah,
free to say pass if you want to. But
go for it.
what? Well, let me start with this one. You're a man of faith. You admit on your show. How does having your Christian faith play a role in your show and in how you live your life?
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, what it mostly means that I'm not performing for a greater audience. I'm performing for an audience of one. I mean, that's ultimately what it comes down to. Then the theology that I believe that I bring to the table, obviously, is completely rooted in Scripture about work being something that we were created to do. And so it informs, even though I don't, preach at anybody, and I'm not out there trying to convert people. My faith is the bedrock foundation of everything I do, not just on the show, anything I write, anything I speak about. It's the foundation.
Hmm. Um, well, this is actually kind of goes back to another question about dealing with your book. I would imagine you would handle two different callers two different ways. What do you try to tell people as far as fighting cynicism in their life and fighting the devil on the shoulder, if you will, when it comes to you have someone that's under 20 or is maybe let's say someone that's over 40 that are trying to figure a career out? What would you tell the guy under 20 versus telling the guy that's over 40?
Yeah, I would tell them both. It's just, you don't get to opt out just because you're not clear. The under
Mm,
20 feel like they're never going to figure it out or they're too young to figure it out. The over 40 feels like time has passed them by. And I would say that you may believe that, but you also must confront the reality that you are a human being, which means you have talent, which means you have passion, which means you have mission.
mhm.
You have things you do well. There are things you really enjoy doing, and there are results that matter to you. You don't get to take a pass on that. Now, you can choose to not do anything about it, but you don't get to say, "Well, that's not true of me." It is true of you. So, I would say that there is a contribution for you to make. Has it changed because of your age, or is it different because of your age? You can make that case, sure, but there's still purpose for you, and
Mhm.
there is still purpose to be given from you. And so that's what I would say. You don't get to opt out just because of life circumstances. It's changed the way you might do it,
Yeah.
but you can still do it.
Oh, that's good, man. Okay, well, let me. I want to ask you this question. Just this is my own personal, you know, thing that I'm into. What do you? Are you into cars? What kind of car do you like?
I do love cars. I need to tell people when I say this, I feel like I'm a poser if I don't tell people that I'm not a gearhead. The
Ah,
only thing I know how to do is check the oil and put air in the tires and put gas in the car. But I do love cars. I love classic cars specifically. I'm not the big new car guy.
right.
It's not my jam. I love classic cars. I watch Meekum auto auctions all the time. I'll just
Nice.
lay in my house on the couch and my family walks by and they just shake their head like dad's just watching cars be auctioned off. But I love old cars because I love vintage. I love vintage older stuff that it's been around a long time. There's just something about that. I think maybe I'm an old soul. I don't know. But I've got a 1972 convertible Carmen Ghia, she's just absolutely
Nice.
stunning. She's beautiful. And I just bought a 94 Toyota Land Cruiser. I haven't even told Rachel yet. She's sitting in here. And I got a great deal on it. And it's those old Land Cruisers, the ones in the 70s, 80s, 90s. I got a 94,
Yeah.
gonna fix it all up. It's just like driving a freaking monster, and I
Dang.
love it.
I grew
But I
up in
just
a
love old cars.
I grew up that way. I'm just similar age to you, and I grew up in an auto body shop. My dad had restored cars for a living for 30 years,
Oh,
and
wow.
he owns a couple of 55 Chevrolets.
Oh,
And
love a '55 Chevy
yeah,
with the tail fins, baby.
uh-huh. And
Yeah.
like when I was a kid, he grew up and went to the old 50. They had this car club called a 55, 57 car club. Is
Mhm.
that you go to the show and that's all there were. And he loves the old Ford pickups. My personal favorite has to be the 67, 68 Camaros. That's my beauty right there.
I love those. If I'm gonna pick a true dream car, it'd be a 1960 convertible Aston Martin.
Ah,
It's just the sweetest little machine you've ever seen on the earth. But I gotta tell you, man, I am loving like a 52, 53 Studebaker truck or one of those old like, I love those old trucks from the '50s.
yeah.
Those things are gorgeous too, and I love at some point, if I sell enough books, I'm gonna get myself a, restored Ford Bronco from the '70s. That's eventually
Ah,
that's what we're going for.
yeah, those are nice.
Oh,
Well,
man.
man, well, Ken, I won't take any more of your time, but I do
Well, I
appreciate you
appreciate
coming
you.
on, man. This
Thanks
has
for
been
having me.
awesome. Yeah, and I do appreciate it. Thanks everybody for joining us today. And Ken, thanks again. And I'd say wish you the best, but I can watch you and find out every day on a show. Do you want to tell
Yeah.
everybody where they can find your show and what time?
Yeah, KenColeman.com is the website where they can buy the book too, From Paycheck to Purpose. You could get it there. We've got some incredible bundles for you that include the Get Clear Career Assessment if you're looking for something that just jolts you and gives you some clarity forward. Um, and you can follow the show and find out where to listen to it at KenColeman.com and check me out on Instagram as well. So thanks for having me.
All right, Ken, thanks a lot. Thanks everybody for joining us. Have a great day, and
Thanks,
we'll
buddy.
see you next time.